The groundbreaking television series Amos and Andy brought joy and controversy to American homes, featuring television's first all-black cast in a primetime sitcom. Yet behind the bright lights and timeless comedy lay a sobering reality. Every single actor who brought these beloved characters to life has now passed away, their voices forever silenced. From the show's pioneering stars to its supporting players, death has claimed them all, leaving only memories of their groundbreaking performances that both entertained millions and sparked national debate about representation in entertainment. Tim Moore, the unforgettable Kingfish. Tim Moore brought the character of George Kingfish Stevens to life on Amos and Andy, and in doing so he became one of television's first black stars. The Kingfish was the show's central figure, a scheming but lovable character who always had some plan to get rich quick, usually involving his friends from the mystic Knights of the Sea Lodge. Moore's portrayal was so memorable and commanding that he became the undisputed star of the series, with his distinctive Georgia drawl and larger-than-life personality making every scene he appeared in come alive. Before television made him famous, Tim Moore had already spent more than 50 years in show business. He was born Harry Roscoe Moore in Rock Island, Illinois, in 1887 and started performing as a child. He left school at age 11 to join a traveling vaudeville act called Cora Miskell and Her Gold Dust Twins, which was so successful it toured Europe. Moore tried many different careers during his youth, including boxing under the name Kid Noble and working as a jockey, but he always returned to entertainment. He performed in vaudeville with his wives, appeared on Broadway in shows like Blackbirds in 1928, and worked the theater circuit for decades before television came calling. When CBS decided to bring Amos and Andy from radio to television in 1951, they needed to find black actors to replace the white performers who had voiced the characters on radio. Moore was actually in retirement when they approached him, but the steady paycheck convinced him to come back to work. He transformed the Kingfish from a radio voice into a full-bodied television character, using his decades of stage experience to create something entirely new. His performance made him the first African-American actor to achieve true stardom on television. The end came tragically for Tim Moore on December 13, 1958, when he died of pulmonary tuberculosis in a Los Angeles hospital at the age of 71. Despite earning good money during his television success, Moore had spent it as quickly as he made it, and left no money for his medical care or funeral expenses. His friend Frank Sinatra stepped forward to pay for all the funeral expenses, which drew thousands of mourners, including many Hollywood celebrities. Moore's final months had been marked by the infamous roast beef scandal, when he was arrested for firing a pistol after discovering his in-laws had eaten his leftover roast beef from New Year's dinner. Tim Moore's legacy remains an important part of television history. He was a pioneering performer who broke barriers and paved the way for future generations of black actors, even though his most famous role would later become controversial. Spencer Williams Jr., the heart of Andy Brown. Spencer Williams Jr. played Andy Brown on Amos and Andy, bringing warmth and humanity to a character who could have easily become just a simple comic fool. Andy was the kind-hearted but often confused friend who frequently fell for the Kingfish's schemes, yet Williams made him lovable rather than just laughable. His portrayal gave the show much of its heart, as Andy represented the everyman who tried to do right but often found himself in trouble through no real fault of his own. Williams brought decades of filmmaking experience to the role, understanding how to create a character that audiences would care about rather than just laugh at. Long before he became known to television audiences, Spencer Williams Jr. had already made his mark as one of the most important black filmmakers of his era. Born in Vidalia, Louisiana, in 1893, Williams served in World War I before moving to Hollywood in the 1920s. He started out writing comedy material and appearing in small film roles, but his real passion was behind the camera. During the 1930s and 40s, Williams wrote, directed, and starred in what were called race films, low-budget movies made specifically for black audiences who were largely ignored by mainstream Hollywood. Williams created some of the most respected films of this era, including The Blood of Jesus in 1941, a religious drama that film historians now consider a masterpiece of independent filmmaking. He also directed Go Down Death and several other films that dealt with themes of faith, morality, and black life in America. These movies played in segregated theaters across the South and in black neighborhoods in northern cities, giving African American audiences a chance to see themselves portrayed with dignity and complexity on screen. Williams was not just an actor, but a complete filmmaker who understood every aspect of movie production. When Amos and Andy came to television, Williams had actually come out of retirement to take the role of Andy Brown. The steady income was welcome after years of struggling to finance his independent films, and he brought a professional approach to the television work that impressed his fellow actors. He occasionally helped write scripts for the show, drawing on his years of experience creating stories and characters. The end came for Spencer Williams Jr. on December 13, 1969, when he died of kidney disease at the Sawtell Veterans Administration Hospital in Los Angeles. He was 76 years old, and in a strange coincidence, he died on the exact same date as his television co-star Tim Moore, though 11 years later. Williams had been living quietly in his final years, supported by his Social Security payments and his military pension from his World War I service. Spencer Williams Jr. left behind a remarkable legacy as both a television actor and an independent filmmaker who created opportunities for black performers when few existed in mainstream entertainment. Charles Correll, the voice behind the vision. Charles Correll may not have appeared on screen during the television version of Amos and Andy, but his influence shaped every episode that aired from 1951 to 1953. As the co-creator of the entire Amos and Andy concept, Correll had originally voiced the character of Andy Brown on radio for more than 20 years before black actors took over the roles for television. He and his partner Freeman Gosden served as producers of the TV series, ensuring that the characters they had developed over decades of radio broadcasting would translate properly to the new medium of television. Their creative vision and business acumen made the television adaptation possible, even though they stepped back from performing the voices themselves. Correll's journey to creating one of America's most famous radio shows began in humble circumstances in Peoria, Illinois, where he was born in 1890. He worked as a stenographer and a bricklayer before discovering his talent for entertainment, and his early jobs taught him the value of hard work and persistence that would serve him well in show business. In the early 1920s, Correll met Freeman Gosden while both were working for a traveling theater company, and they quickly discovered they had a natural chemistry as performers. They started out doing a variety show called Sam and Henry on a Chicago radio station, playing two black characters in what was then considered acceptable entertainment, though it would later be criticized for relying on racial stereotypes. The success of Sam and Henry led Correll and Gosden to create Amos and Andy in 1928, and the show became one of the most popular programs in radio history. At its peak, the nightly 15-minute program was so popular that movie theaters would stop their films to broadcast the show, and restaurants would turn up their radios so customers wouldn't miss an episode. Correll voiced Andy Brown and several other characters, developing distinctive personalities and speech patterns that millions of Americans came to know by heart. The show made both men wealthy and famous, and they continued broadcasting various versions of Amos and Andy until 1960, spanning more than 30 years on radio. When television became the dominant form of entertainment, Correll and Gosden made the difficult decision to step aside as performers while remaining involved as producers and creative consultants. They understood that the medium of television required visual authenticity that radio did not, and they worked closely with the black actors who took over the roles to ensure continuity with the characters they had developed. Charles Correll died on September 26, 1972, from a heart attack while visiting a Chicago hospital. He was 82 years old and had been enjoying a comfortable retirement in Beverly Hills, California, living just a few blocks away from his longtime partner, Freeman Gosden. At the time of his death, Correll had been retired from show business for more than a decade, though he and Gosden had briefly returned to television in the early 1960s to provide voices for an animated series. Charles Correll's legacy in broadcasting history remains significant, as he helped create one of the first situation comedies and played a crucial role in developing radio as a form of mass entertainment in America. Freeman Gosden, the creative force behind the characters. Freeman Gosden stood as the creative powerhouse behind Amos and Andy, and while he never appeared on camera during the television series, his influence shaped every moment of the show that aired from 1951 to 1953. As the co-creator and producer of the television adaptation, Gosden had originally brought the characters of Amos Jones and George Kingfish Stevens to life on radio, voicing multiple roles and developing the distinctive personalities that would eventually be portrayed by black actors on television. His understanding of comedy timing, character development, and storytelling helped ensure that the transition from radio to television maintained the essence of what had made Amos and Andy one of the most popular programs in broadcasting history. Born Freeman Fisher Gosden in Richmond, Virginia, in 1899, he discovered his talent for entertainment while working for a traveling theater company in the early 1920s. It was during this time that he met Charles Correll, and together they began experimenting with different radio formats and characters. Gosden had a natural ear for voices and dialects, which served him well when they created their first successful radio show, Sam and Henry, in 1926. This program laid the groundwork for what would become Amos and Andy just 2 years later, when they moved to a different radio station and were forced to create new characters with similar appeal. The success of Amos and Andy on radio made both Gosden and Correll wealthy men and established them as pioneers in the development of situation comedy. Gosden voiced the title character Amos, the philosophical cab driver who served as the moral center of the show, as well as the scheming Kingfish and numerous other supporting characters. His ability to switch between different voices and personalities within a single episode showcased his remarkable talent as a performer. The show's popularity was so immense that it influenced American culture in ways that few entertainment programs have ever achieved, with businesses scheduling their operations around the show's broadcast time and millions of families gathering around their radios each evening. Beyond his radio career, Gosden became a prominent figure in Hollywood society, forming friendships with major celebrities and becoming a charter member of the prestigious Augusta National Golf Club in 1932. His social connections and business acumen helped him navigate the entertainment industry successfully for decades. In 1976, he served as best man at Frank Sinatra's wedding to Barbara Marx, demonstrating the lasting friendships he had built throughout his career. Freeman Gosden died on December 10, 1982, from congestive heart failure in Los Angeles at the age of 83. He had been living comfortably in retirement, having stepped away from regular broadcasting in 1960 when the original Amos and Andy radio show finally ended its remarkable 32-year run. His death marked the end of an era in American broadcasting, as he had been present at the creation of radio comedy and had helped establish many of the formats that television would later adopt. Freeman Gosden's contributions to American entertainment extended far beyond any single show, as he helped create the foundation for situation comedy that continues to influence television programming today. Ernestine Wade, the voice of Sapphire Stevens. Ernestine Wade brought the character of Sapphire Stevens to life on both radio and television versions of Amos and Andy, creating one of the most memorable female characters in early broadcasting history. As the sharp-tongued wife of the Kingfish, Sapphire served as both the voice of reason and the source of comic conflict in many episodes, often calling out her husband's schemes while trying to keep their household running. Wade's performance was so distinctive and powerful that she became one of the few actors to successfully transition from the radio version of the show to television, maintaining the essence of her character across both mediums. Her portrayal of Sapphire made her one of the most recognizable black actresses of the 1950s, at a time when opportunities for African-American performers were extremely limited. Born in Jackson, Mississippi in 1906, Wade grew up in a family with strong connections to the entertainment world, as her mother performed in vaudeville and her grandmother worked at the Lincoln Theater in Baltimore. Wade trained as a singer and organist from an early age, and her family moved to Los Angeles when she was young, giving her access to the growing entertainment industry in California. She began her acting career at the age of 4 and continued performing throughout her childhood, developing the skills that would later make her a successful radio actress. In 1935, she became a member of a singing group called the Four Hot Chocolates, which helped establish her reputation as a versatile performer. Wade's breakthrough came when she auditioned for the Amos and Andy radio show in the late 1930s, originally landing a role as a character named Valada Green. The story of her audition has become part of broadcasting legend, as she was initially hired for a singing role but was asked to read lines and then to scream, and her powerful scream got her the job immediately. She began playing Sapphire Stevens in 1939 and continued in the role for more than a decade on radio before reprising it for television. Wade also provided voice work for Disney's Song of the South in 1946, playing a butterfly, and appeared in the film Rhapsody in Blue as part of a choir. Throughout her career, Wade defended her work on Amos and Andy against critics who felt the show presented harmful stereotypes of African Americans. She argued that the program actually showed black people in professional roles such as doctors, lawyers, and business owners, rather than limiting them to the typical servant roles that were common in entertainment at the time. Wade believed that her work, and that of her colleagues, had opened doors for future generations of black performers to find better opportunities in television and film. Ernestine Wade died on April 15, 1983, in Los Angeles, California, at the age of 76. She had continued working in television and radio after Amos and Andy ended, doing voice work for commercials and appearing in guest roles on various shows. Her death marked the passing of one of the pioneering women in radio and early television, an actress who had helped establish the medium during its formative years and had created a character that remained memorable decades after the show ended. Ernestine Wade's legacy lies in her role as a trailblazer who helped prove that black actors could carry major roles in American entertainment, paving the way for the performers who followed. Johnny Lee, the bumbling lawyer with a heart. Johnny Lee created one of television's most memorable comic characters in Algonquin J. Calhoun, the self-proclaimed lawyer who rarely won a case but never stopped trying on Amos and Andy. Calhoun was the kind of attorney who would take any case for the right price, often representing the kingfish in his various schemes and legal troubles, though his courtroom skills were questionable at best. Lee brought a unique energy to the role, making Calhoun both incompetent and endearing. A man whose confidence far exceeded his abilities, but whose heart was usually in the right place. His portrayal helped establish the character as a fan favorite, and his distinctive voice and comic timing made every scene he appeared in memorable for television audiences across America. Born John Dotson Lee Jr. in Los Angeles in 1898, Lee began his entertainment career as a dancer before expanding into singing and acting. He spent much of his early career performing in vaudeville, where he developed the skills in physical comedy and vocal performance that would later serve him well in radio and television. During the 1930s and 40s, Lee appeared in several films, usually in small roles, but he found his true calling in voice work and radio performance. His ability to create distinctive character voices made him valuable to radio producers who needed versatile performers who could bring multiple characters to life. Lee's most famous work before Amos and Andy came when Disney hired him to provide the voice of Brer Rabbit in the 1946 film Song of the South. His performance as the clever and mischievous rabbit in the Uncle Remus stories showcased his talent for bringing animated characters to life through voice alone. The film became a classic of Disney animation, and Lee's work as Brer Rabbit remained one of his most recognized achievements throughout his career. He also appeared in other films during the 1940s, including Come On, Cowboy and She's Too Mean for Me, though these roles were smaller and less memorable than his voice work. When Amos and Andy moved from radio to television, Lee was one of the performers who successfully made the transition, taking on the role of Algonquin J. Calhoun and making it completely his own. His performance combined the character's legal pretensions with genuine warmth and humor, creating a figure that audiences loved despite his obvious shortcomings as an attorney. Lee understood how to make incompetence funny without making it mean-spirited, and his Calhoun became one of the show's most quotable characters. Johnny Lee died on December 12, 1965, from a heart attack in Los Angeles at the age of 67. His death came relatively early compared to some of his fellow cast members, cutting short a career that had brought joy to audiences through both his voice work and his television performances. Lee had been working steadily until his final years, continuing to take on various entertainment projects and maintaining his connection to the industry that had been his life's work. Johnny Lee's contribution to American entertainment, particularly through his voice work and his memorable television character, helped establish the foundation for character acting that would influence comedy performers for generations to come. Amanda Randolph, the pioneering mother-in-law. Amanda Randolph brought the character of Mama, Sapphire's domineering mother-in-law, to life on Amos and Andy with a performance that was both fierce and funny. As the stern matriarch who never trusted the kingfish and constantly worried about her daughter's marriage, Mama served as the voice of family responsibility and common sense in many episodes. Randolph's portrayal made the character more than just a typical meddling mother-in-law, giving her genuine concern for her family's welfare and a sharp wit that could cut through the kingfish's schemes with ease. Her performance helped establish one of television's early strong female characters, showing that older Black women could be portrayed with dignity and strength, rather than just as comic relief. Born in Louisville, Kentucky in 1896, Amanda Randolph grew up in a family that valued education and music, as her father was a Methodist minister and her mother was a teacher. The family moved frequently during her childhood, but by age 14, Randolph was already earning money playing piano and organ in Cleveland, Ohio. She discovered her musical talents early and began recording piano rolls for the Vocal Style Company in Cincinnati around 1919, working under the name Mandy Randolph. These recordings made her one of the only known Black female pianists to record piano rolls during that era, marking her as a pioneer in the music industry long before she became famous on television. Randolph's entertainment career flourished during the 1920s, when she joined major musical productions like Shuffle Along and The Chocolate Dandies, working alongside stars like Tim Moore, who would later become her television co-star. She recorded several blues and jazz songs for Bluebird Records in the 1930s, performing with her own orchestra and establishing herself as a respected musician and performer. During the 1940s, she made history by becoming the first African-American performer to star in a regularly scheduled network television show when she appeared in Dumont's The Laytons, breaking barriers that would benefit future generations of Black entertainers. When Amos and Andy came to television, Randolph was one of the few performers who had already appeared in both the radio and television versions of the show, bringing continuity and experience to the production. She also worked simultaneously on other television programs, including The Danny Thomas Show, where she played the family maid Louise for several years, demonstrating her versatility as a performer who could handle both comedy and drama. Amanda Randolph died on August 24, 1967, from a stroke in Duarte, California, at the age of 70. She was survived by her son Joseph and daughter Evelyn, and was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the Hollywood Hills beside her sister Lillian, who was also an accomplished actress. Her death came while she was still actively working in television, having appeared in The Danny Thomas Show reunion special shortly before her passing. Amanda Randolph's legacy extends far beyond any single role, as she broke important barriers for African American women in entertainment and proved that Black performers could succeed across multiple mediums throughout their careers. Alvin Childress, the moral voice of Amos Jones. Alvin Childress portrayed Amos Jones, the title character and philosophical heart of Amos and Andy, serving as both narrator and moral compass for the entire series. While the Kingfish and Andy provided most of the comedy through their schemes and misadventures, Amos represented dignity, hard work, and common sense, often stepping in to help his friends when their plans went wrong. Childress brought a quiet strength to the role that made Amos the most respected character on the show. A family man and cab driver who worked honestly for his living and tried to guide others toward making better choices. His performance helped balance the show's comedy with moments of genuine wisdom and heart, making him essential to the series even though he had fewer comedic scenes than his co-stars. Born in Meridian, Mississippi, in 1907, Childress came to acting with little previous experience in film or television before landing the role that would define his career. He had worked in various jobs before being discovered during the extensive nationwide search that CBS conducted to find Black actors for the television adaptation of Amos and Andy. The producers were looking for performers who could capture the essence of characters that had been popular on radio for more than 20 years. And Childress impressed them with his natural ability to convey the dignity and wisdom that the character of Amos required. His casting proved to be one of the most successful decisions in the show's transition from radio to television. After Amos and Andy ended in 1953, Childress continued working as an actor, appearing in several films and guest starring on popular television shows, including Good Times and The Jeffersons. These later roles allowed him to demonstrate his range as a performer while working with a new generation of Black actors who had benefited from the barriers that shows like Amos and Andy had helped break down. Throughout his career, Childress remained a strong defender of the show, arguing that critics focused too much on negative stereotypes while ignoring the positive aspects of the program, particularly its portrayal of Black professionals such as doctors, lawyers, and business owners. Childress believed that Amos and Andy had actually presented a more diverse view of African American life than most entertainment of its era, showing Black characters in positions of authority and respect, rather than limiting them to servant roles. He often pointed out that the show featured Black judges, police officers, and successful business people, arguing that these positive representations were overlooked by those who criticized the program. Alvin Childress died on April 19, 1986, at St. Erne Sanitarium in Inglewood, California, at the age of 78. He had been battling multiple health problems, including Parkinson's disease, diabetes, and pneumonia, and his wife Sophie said that his remains would be cremated. His death marked the passing of one of the last surviving main cast members from the original television series, ending a life that had been dedicated to breaking down barriers in American entertainment. Alvin Childress left behind a legacy as an actor who brought dignity to every role he played and who helped pave the way for future generations of African American performers in television and film. Lillian Randolph, the heart of Madame Queen. Lillian Randolph brought warmth and sophistication to the character of Madame Queen, Andy Brown's on and off love interest on Amos and Andy, creating one of the show's most appealing female characters. As the owner of a beauty salon, Madame Queen represented independence and business success, showing that Black women could be portrayed as entrepreneurs rather than just domestic workers. Randolph's performance gave the character both strength and femininity, making her someone that audiences could admire while also providing romantic complications that added depth to Andy's storylines. Her portrayal helped establish Madame Queen as more than just a love interest, turning her into a fully realized character who had her own goals and opinions about the men in her life. Born Costello Randolph in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1898, Lillian grew up in a family that valued both education and music, as her father was a Methodist minister and her mother was a teacher. She was the younger sister of Amanda Randolph, who would also become a successful actress, and the two women would eventually work together on Amos and Andy. Lillian began her professional career singing on local radio stations in Cleveland and Detroit during the 1930s, where her talent was noticed by radio producers who were looking for versatile black performers. Her work in radio led to opportunities in Hollywood, where she moved in 1936 to pursue opportunities in film and more sophisticated radio programming. Randolph's most recognizable work outside of Amos and Andy came through her voice acting, particularly as Mammy Two Shoes in the popular Tom and Jerry cartoons produced by MGM from 1940 to 1952. Her distinctive voice brought life to the character, who was often the only human presence in the animated shorts, and her performance became familiar to millions of children and adults who watched the cartoons in theaters and later on television. She also appeared in several notable films, including Frank Capra's beloved classic It's a Wonderful Life in 1946, where she played a supporting role that showcased her ability to bring dignity to any character she portrayed. Throughout the 1940s and 50s, Randolph worked steadily in radio, appearing on shows like The Great Gildersleeve, where she played the maid Birdie, and Beulah, where she took over the title role when the original actress became ill. Her radio work demonstrated her range as a performer and her ability to create memorable characters through voice alone, skills that served her well when she transitioned to television with Amos and Andy. Lillian Randolph died on September 12, 1980, from cancer at Arcadia Methodist Hospital in California at the age of 81. She had continued working in television and film throughout the 1970s, appearing in shows like Sanford and Son and The Jeffersons, proving that her talent remained strong even as she entered her later years. Her death came just 3 years before her sister Amanda's passing, marking the loss of one half of a remarkable sister duo who had both made significant contributions to American entertainment. Lillian Randolph's legacy encompasses her groundbreaking work across multiple forms of media, from radio and film to television and animation, helping to establish opportunities for black performers in every area of the entertainment industry. Jester Hairston, the cultured Henry. Van Porter Jester Hairston portrayed Henry Van Porter, the sophisticated socialite who represented the upper class of Harlem society on Amos and Andy, bringing an air of culture and refinement to the show that contrasted sharply with the everyday struggles of the main characters. Van Porter was the kind of man who attended fancy parties and cultural events, often looking down on the antics of the Kingfish and his friends, while maintaining his position as one of the more successful members of their community. Hairston's performance gave the character genuine dignity and intelligence, showing that the show could present black characters across the entire social spectrum, rather than limiting them to working-class roles. His portrayal helped demonstrate that African American entertainment could include characters of education and sophistication. Born in Bellows Creek, North Carolina, in 1901, Hairston grew up hearing the stories and songs of his grandmother, whose parents had been slaves, and these early experiences with traditional black music would shape his entire career. His family moved to Pennsylvania when he was young, and Hairston initially planned to study landscape architecture at Massachusetts Agricultural College. But his musical talents were so obvious that a benefactor offered to pay for him to study music instead. He graduated from Tufts University in 1929, becoming one of the first black students admitted to the school. and later studied at the prestigious Juilliard School in New York. Hairston's greatest achievements came through his work as a composer and choral conductor rather than his acting career, though both were significant. He created Hollywood's first integrated choir and worked on the music for more than 40 films, including classics like Red River and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. His most famous composition was Mary's Boy Child, which became a popular Christmas song, and he also arranged Amen for Sidney Poitier's performance in Lilies of the Field. In 1961, the State Department appointed him as a Goodwill Ambassador, and he traveled around the world teaching and performing traditional Black spirituals, helping to preserve and share this important part of American culture. Beyond his work behind the scenes, Hairston appeared in more than 20 films, often in small roles, including The Alamo, To Kill a Mockingbird, and In the Heat of the Night. Later in his career, he found a new audience when he played Raleigh Forbes, the wise church elder on the television sitcom Amen, which ran from 1986 to 1991. This role introduced him to a younger generation of viewers who appreciated his humor and warmth in a show that celebrated Black church life and community. Jester Hairston died on January 18, 2000, in Los Angeles, at the remarkable age of 98, having lived through nearly the entire 20th century. His life spanned from the era of Jim Crow laws through the civil rights movement to the modern age of television and film, and he had witnessed and participated in the dramatic changes in opportunities for Black performers during that time. Jester Hairston's legacy extends far beyond his acting work to include his crucial role in preserving and promoting African-American musical traditions while breaking down barriers in Hollywood's music industry. Nick Stewart, the last voice of Lightnin'. Nick Stewart brought the character of Lightnin', the slow-moving janitor at the mystic nights of the Sea Lodge, to life on Amos and Andy, with a performance that was both comedic and deeply human. Despite the character's name suggesting speed, Lightnin' moved like molasses and spoke in a drawling manner that made him the source of much gentle humor on the show. Stewart understood that he was playing a character based on harmful stereotypes, but he approached the role with dignity and used his earnings from the show to create opportunities for other Black actors to find better, more respectful roles in entertainment. His portrayal of Lightnin' made him memorable to television audiences, but his real legacy lay in what he did with the money and fame the role provided him. Born Horace Winfred Stewart in Harlem, New York, in 1910, Stewart came from a family of recent immigrants from Barbados who had come to America seeking better opportunities. He began his entertainment career as a dancer at famous Harlem venues like the Cotton Club and Hoofer's Club, performing alongside legendary musicians like Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington during the height of the Harlem Renaissance. Stewart also became a veteran of Broadway shows, where he created a comedic character he called Nicodemus, that he performed in productions like Swingin' the Dream and Louisiana Purchase. His early work in films included the 1936 movie Go West, Young Man with Mae West, and he provided voice work for Disney, including the voice of Brer Bear in Song of the South in 1946. When Amos and Andy moved to television, Stewart was originally offered the role of lawyer Algonquin J. Calhoun, but he turned it down, and the part went to Johnny Lee instead. The producers then offered him the role of Lightnin', which he accepted with a specific goal in mind: to earn enough money to open his own theater where Black actors could perform in roles that showcased their talents without relying on racial stereotypes. In 1950, Stewart and his wife Edna founded the Ebony Showcase Theater in Los Angeles, using money he had earned from Amos and Andy to create a venue that would provide opportunities for performers of all races to work in quality productions. The Ebony Showcase Theater became one of the most important venues for Black actors in Los Angeles, helping to launch the careers of performers like John Amos, Nichelle Nichols, and Isabel Sanford. Stewart often said that he was lightnin' by day, but I put on serious black theater by night, demonstrating his commitment to using his television success to create positive change in the entertainment industry. Nick Stewart died on December 18, 2000, at his son's home in Los Angeles at the age of 90. He was the last surviving member of the main television cast of Amos and Andy, and his death marked the end of an era in American entertainment history. Sadly, his beloved Ebony Showcase Theater had been foreclosed in 1996 and demolished in 1998, a loss that deeply affected Stewart in his final years. Nick Stewart's true legacy lies not in his portrayal of Lightnin', but in his lifelong commitment to creating better opportunities for Black performers and his understanding that sometimes taking difficult roles can provide the resources needed to create positive change.